Now, you might have heard several reasons for why fibroids happen, but if you stick around to the end of this video, I will show you some of the most likely causes that have stood up to medical scrutiny to date. I've looked at some studies going back over the last 10 years about the causes of fibroids, and some of the treatments that are currently in use today are based on the evidence that's been gathered from these studies. Now I'm going to show you 5 different potential causes that have been linked to fibroids. We know that fibroids are benign growths of the womb and that they happen in 30 to 40% of women. We also know that there are certain conditions that may be associated with developing fibroids, and in the previous video we've talked about this. For example, we know that fibroids are more likely to happen in older women, so age is a factor. Fibroids can also happen in women of particular backgrounds, for example African or African American or Afro-Caribbean women. It tends to occur more commonly in these groups compared to ladies of other backgrounds. We also know that nulliparity, for example, never having been pregnant, or obesity might be associated with an increased risk of developing fibroids. So we have all this information about certain circumstances where you may have fibroids happening. But we don't know exactly what causes fibroids to happen. However, there have been some thoughts, so let's look at them. Cause 1, reproductive hormones. These refer to the hormones estrogen and progesterone, mainly produced in the woman's ovary and responsible for directing aspects of reproduction, the menstrual cycle. It has been found that these hormones are associated with developing fibroids. These hormones support the development of the womb, and the studies have shown that the fibroids are actually susceptible to changes in the quantities or the levels of the hormones. Okay, cause 2 are genes. Some studies indicate that genes, that is the material that you inherit from your parents and pass on to your children, are associated with development of fibroids. Now, the research of this is still going on, so we don't have any definitive information. But what it does suggest and indicate is that if a woman has fibroids, it's possible that her mother had fibroids or her sisters had fibroids, and possible that her own daughters may go on to develop fibroids. Cause number 3 is stress. It is thought by those who have looked into this particular factor that stress happening very early in a woman's life may be associated with the development of fibroids later on. Now, this may be some form of abuse early on. It might be problems like bereavement, trouble with money, problems with jobs, or problems with the family, any number of different circumstances that impact severely on in terms of an individual's mental health and psyche may be responsible for developing fibroids in the future. In addition to this, stress can lead to alteration of the hormone balance. Progesterone, which is one of the hormones that we've talked about earlier, having something to do with development of fibroids, can also be affected during times of stress. So this could be a factor in the development of fibroids. In addition to this, being under stress could be associated with some adverse health behaviors, and this could include things like being physically inactive, drinking excess amounts of alcohol, or unhealthy eating habits. And so what you find is that women might gain weight, and of course we've already said that being obese can be associated with fibroids. So this is another way in which stress could be associated with the development of fibroids. So now there is a lot of talk out there about the possible causes of fibroids. Some may or may not be true, but I'd really like to hear from you. Comment down in the section below what causes of fibroids that you've actually heard of or come across, so that we can sort of get an idea of the different possible reasons that people have from one place to the other. So I look forward to seeing what you think. So let's move on to cause number 4, and this is another hormone called the growth hormone. The growth hormone is produced in the body and contributes to general development in children, but also to the development of bones in adults. Some researchers think that there is some association between changes in the growth hormone levels and development of fibroids, but this position is still under study and there are no certainties about it as a possible cause of fibroids. Now, the fifth and last cause that we're going to talk about today are micronutrients. It is still very much under study, but the thinking is that these micronutrients, which include your vitamins and supplements, could be associated with developing fibroids. So the researchers looking into this feel that micronutrients, for example iron or vitamin A or vitamin D, if they are in low levels in a woman's system, might contribute towards development of fibroids. Like I said, this is still under study, but you can imagine just how important this would be in terms of the dietary advice that a woman would need in terms of preventing or managing fibroids. Although not technically a cause, I did want to mention here the hormone replacement therapy and hormonal contraceptives. Just like the hormones of pregnancy or the reproductive hormones that we mentioned earlier, estrogen and progesterone, these hormones can have some effect on the womb, and we know that they can contribute towards increasing the size of a fibroid. Right, so what this shows is that while presently we don't have a definite cause or causes for fibroids, we have a lot of thoughts about some possibilities that are fairly reasonably backed up with some scientific evidence, and there's still some more research work going on. Now, this is important because once you identify the cause, then we're getting closer to how we can eliminate that cause in order to prevent fibroids from developing. It's also important to note that a lot more studies need to be done in different parts of the world, but I also want to remind you that the cause of fibroids, from what you've seen, may not just be one particular factor. It might be a combination of different things. Now, if you're concerned that you may have fibroids and you're not sure, I've included a link in the description below to my heavy menstrual periods checker, which is a tool that you can use to identify if your periods are actually abnormal and whether there's a possibility that you could have fibroids, and that will spur you on to have a discussion with your doctor or medical provider in order to make a diagnosis. Okay, that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed it and found it useful, please leave a comment below and consider sharing it with a friend and subscribing to the channel, because that really encourages and helps me make more videos like this. So until the next one, I hope you have a great time. Take care.